Broadway, and then at Broadway is where Baxter and Broadway is the tavern, and then back then it was Phoenixville. So that's the Phoenixville neighborhood. A lot of people, when you hear Phoenixville, think Phoenixville Tavern, and that area there is all of Phoenixville. A lot of people are surprised to see it go all the way down to Preston.
Hello. Aaron, you forgot to turn the mic on. You didn't turn the mic on.
So again, Hallie and Aaron thought it might be a good idea just to spark some imagination, creativity, which y'all may not need, to tell you a little bit about the history of the neighborhood and some particular points of interest and landmarks. And Doug, please pipe in. Again, he's lived here longer than I have and has been on the board longer than I've been associated with it. Basically, the neighborhood was founded in like 1861 as a German settlement, and it was started around this area up here, which we call the Triangle, around a park, Phoenix Hill Park, that was created there in like 1865. And actually, that area became an incredibly popular recreation area when in 1865 the Phoenix Hill Brewery was established, and it was a huge complex that actually included, they had a large pavilion that included a roller skating rink, it included 4 bowling lanes, a dance floor, a stage, and a 111-foot bar. So it was this huge kind of park recreation area. And I'm just going to read what it said in the Encyclopedia of Louisville. It said, crowds flocked, I think it's supposed to be, flocked to the park-like setting on the scenic knoll to play cards, listen to orators such as Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, and William Jennings Bryan, to bowl, to dance, to drink bohemian lagers at the 111-foot bar, and to hear John Philip Sousa's band. So it was a huge area. And all of those buildings are gone, except right along Baxter, at 508 Baxter, there's the Acme Electric Company. It's kind of a grayish-blue building. And if you haven't been by there, actually on the building there's some murals painted that kind of show what used to happen on there. And that's the stable that was there at the time. But all the other buildings are gone. But they're also, I don't think it's just rumor, but you can still get into the caves where the beer was kept cold. Where Baxter Avenue Baptist Church is, kind of back in there, there's still entrance to the caves where they kept the beer. The first indoor baseball game in Louisville was held in 1891 at the Phoenix Hill Dance Hall. In 1896, this is my favorite, six-day bicycle races, a popular event at the time, were held in the Bicycle Bowl with women contestants, and it was the first time that women were allowed in that type of thing, and it was here in Louisville, up in Phoenix Hill. St. Martin of Tours Church was and still is an important place of worship. It's on Shelby Street near Broadway. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that. It's an interesting place to go in if you haven't been there. They have relics from several martyrs in there as well, and they're also, it's significant because it's the only Catholic church in this region that still does Latin masses. So people come from all over to that church. It's also in that area, let me turn around when it's not, but in that Shelby Street area near Broadway is where, I don't know if y'all heard of the Bloody Monday riots that happened back in 1855. There were anti-foreigner, anti-Catholic riots on an election day, and 22 people were killed. And basically it moved from, I think, the Portland area, I think down near Nelligan Hall in that area, and moved up through, and there were fires set, and the church was saved by a mayor at the time, St. Martin's Church, but it was threatened to be burned down at that point. They also moved on. There used to be another brewery right along Beargrass Creek, the Armed Brewster Brewery, and it was burned down after they got everything they wanted out of there and drank it all. So, but the brewery in the park closed in 1919 because of prohibition. So that was kind of the end of that particular era. You're also all aware of the flood of 1937, and actually Phoenix Hill played a big part in that because on Baxter Avenue was where the eastern part of the pontoon bridge was that helped get people out of downtown and up into the Highlands area. So it played a role in that. In 1940, the Clarksville Housing Project was built, which is where Liberty Green is. I'm assuming all of y'all have been around long enough to know that there was a 6-block housing project a couple blocks from here. And they tore it down to do mixed income housing, which is where Liberty Green is. But it was built as an urban slum clearance project. And then following World War II, it was built around World War II time. Following that is when a lot of the white residents and businesses moved out of the neighborhood and moved to the suburbs, basically leaving a lot of buildings here to decay and to slowly fall apart. And
one thing also about the housing projects, since some of this might give ideas and things, at that time when they built those housing projects, if you know any of the history of them, some of them still exist. They built one, and there's a map that they have that has W and C for white and color. And actually, each housing project has a twin. One was for whites, one was for blacks.
So Clarksdale and Beecher Terrace, which is on the west side of downtown.
And only until the later 60s when they built Cotter and Lang homes did they was it no longer based on the race and that sort of thing. So if that helps in any kind.
And one of the housing types that we're best known for are the shotgun houses. And I just heard today from somebody, they were saying
Preservation Alliance history.
Yeah, was that the shotgun houses are basically becoming an endangered species, and that's something the neighborhood's been working on, trying to get what we call a conservation district, which is kind of preservation light. And we're still working with our council person and the Metro Council on that to try to save those. But in 1975, in response to all of this, the Phoenix Hill Neighborhood Association was formed. And were you a part of it from the very beginning?
I didn't move until 77.
Okay, 77.
Late.
Well, in 1977, Mayor Harvey Sloan declared this area blighted, and so it was available for revitalization, and they secured federal funding to start rebuilding it. So that's kind of where the revitalization, the Phoenix Rising part kind of fits in. In the 1980s, Phoenix Hill Townhouses, which is subsidized housing, several large complexes were built. Phoenix Hill Townhouses, Phoenix Place Apartments, which is over on Muhammad Ali in that area, a couple of cane centers, which were for disabled folks, and then Billy Goat Strut over on Main Street were all built during that time. Then in 1993,
one other thing in terms of Phoenix Place Apartments, again, if you look at the structure of them, they're built new. They put the wires underground. But one of the things that we, as an association, had to do, and we think they did fairly well. Now that there's trees up, it even looks better. But it was to save as many of the houses in between as possible. And a number of the people who lived in those houses were elderly. So we set it up to where their houses were sold, but they had a life estate, which meant they had a right to stay in that house. But the development knew that they were going to have control of this house at some point, So some people lived a very long and fruitful life, and would still be able to stay in those houses because they had this life estate. So if you look at those apartments, some of them are older and some of them are built more or less to fit in. Like I said, much better now that there's trees hiding some of the features. But
Can you guys tell us about Billy Goat Strut? Or
I don't know that much about Billy Goat Strut, actually.
what's the story on the name?
Well,
actually, the name of the alley.
Billy Goat Strut. There was Billy Goat Alley, and there's also
Nanny Goat.
I think a Nanny Goat Alley. It's in Clifton as well. If you go up by the D.B. Williamson Company, that's Billy Goat Strut as well. It's at least historically, whether it's true or not, it's where people brought their goats in and out. Partly because of Butcher Town and just where, in terms of people where they had their goats. So they named it after the alley that it's actually on, and it was some kind of industrial type of building, I couldn't say what kind, and a private developer came in and turned it into, I guess, condominiums and maybe apartments. But that was one of the earlier developments, and in some ways they were further out than even we were in terms of the Phoenix Hill area, and in some ways they related as much to Butcher Town, because they're getting close to the Slugger Field in terms of